Hi there, welcome to Floating in Dreams. Today's video is going to be a video where I revisit some older eyeshadow palettes and ask ourselves the questions. Are these gem or are they junk? Welcome to everybody watching today. Thank you so very much for joining me. If you're into eyeshadow palettes, essences and Catrice reviews, and getting the use out of your makeup the way that I am, then definitely stay tuned because I think today's video may be right up your street because I am going back to 4 older palettes that I have in my collection. And I started doing this series because I have a lot of eyeshadow palettes and I just wanted to give some of my OG favorites some loving. But something I also like to do on here is to rearrange color stories and repress things and do things like that. But then of course I do want to test out how successful those repressed and reorganized color stories are. So 2 of the palettes we'll be talking about today are those repressed or reorganized color stories. And then there are 2 that are still in its original packaging that I really love, and one of these wasn't in here even when I decided to film this video. Like when I was planning things out, but I roped in one towards the end of the month because I was like, I need to go back to that ASAP. So in case you're unfamiliar with the channel, it may be good to know that I have fair skin with a cool neutral undertone, which greatly skews my makeup preferences. And because I have been buying, trying, and reviewing makeup for more than a decade, I also have some very strong favorites, so I hope you like to stay tuned for all of that goodness. Join the Snow Angel Club, and all you need to do is just subscribe down below. So yes, which 4 palettes are we going to be talking about then today? I have the Kaleidos Futurism for you, which is no longer the Kaleidos Futurism, which I'll show you in a minute. I'm going to be talking about my Urban Decay Naked 2, which is no longer the Urban Decay Naked 2, because these are both reorganized and some repressing happened as well. We have the Lime Crime Venus Immortalis, which is a palette I featured in a video earlier in March, and I was like, I have to go back to this ASAP. So this is the one that I decided to squeeze in here towards the end of the month. And then the Lorac Pro 3, which is an OG favorite neutral palette for me, and I did 2 looks with that one. So everything was 1 look, save for the Lorac. And originally I was only going back to 3 of these because I had quite a few new bits to try this month because I wanted to make sure I reviewed a couple of things before I could sit down and film some videos next month. So that's why I was like, I'll feature some fewer palettes in this video and then I can feature perhaps a bit more again next month. We'll see how it plays out. But yeah, I did decide to rope in 1 extra thing. So let's kick things off with what's on my eyes today. And what's on my eyes today is the Kaleidos Futurism one, which isn't the Futurism one. Before we get to this palette though, it may be good to know that Kaleidos has now announced that the remaining Futurism palettes will be discontinued. So if you are still looking in some of these, I think there are 4 that were still available. If you were interested in those color stories, this may be the time to pick them up. I believe they're going to go on clearance soon if they aren't already. So I just wanted to give that a shout out. But yeah, my Kaleidos Futurism is no longer the Kaleidos Futurism because I felt the original palette was too similar to my Melt Gemini. When I decluttered my makeup collection last year, I decided to rearrange this and pull some shades from another palette that wasn't my favorite, but that had a couple of really gorgeous shades. The pans in these Futurism palettes from Kaleidos are magnetic, so it was really easy to pull it apart, take the shades out, and put some new shades in. It was just a really clever one, and I really like this packaging. Like, the packaging of the Futurism palettes, chef's kiss. This is what the inside of the palette looks like. So what is inside it? I repressed some Beauty Bay Wilderness shades in here. So the Beauty Bay Wilderness palette was one that wasn't my favorite, even though it got a lot of hype. The Beauty Bay formula just isn't my favorite because it's quite kaboom, kapow, pigment in a lot of cases, and I know that's the norm for a lot of beauty creators. It just isn't mine because I like something that's a bit more buildable. I repressed these last year and I just hadn't managed to put this in one of these videos just yet. So I was like, for spring, this blue-green sort of vibe I think can be really pretty. And I think it is. It's what's on my eyes today and I really enjoy the look. I used all 6 shades to create the look I'm wearing today, and I do have to say that repressing did change the formula of these. So I feel that the mattes especially weren't as intense as I remember these being, and the shimmers also needed a bit more help picking up. They were best applied with a finger, but the end result I think is really, really pretty. And I didn't do this on purpose, but I think it goes really well with the blouse because my Sézane blouse that I'm wearing has like the yellow and like the greeny teal sort of in here as well. So I think it goes together really well, and I think it's just a perfect spring look. This is the way I was able to make the best of both worlds, and now I still have shades that go really well with this packaging in this little palette, and this way I can get more use out of those shades for sure. And then we're moving on to the Naked 2. That isn't exactly my Naked 2. This is currently in my Shop My Stash all the time because I have decided to try and hit pan on as many shades as I can this year. I haven't hit pan on any of them yet, which is why I was like, I need to put this in one of these like palettes revisited things so I can actually dedicate at least a look to this so that I reacquaint myself with it. I did pull some of these shades in when I was doing my 31 days of one and done eyeshadows in January, and like some other little bits I filmed here and there. I definitely go into this if I feel I don't have all the shades that I need. I sort of grab this to round out looks, especially because it has a really good matte taupe. So what is in here though isn't the Naked 2. Because this is what my palette looks like, and I still haven't glued these back in. I know, I'm lazy. I really need to do that. So some of these could fall out, but this is the Naked 2 and the Naked 3 combined, which I filmed a dedicated video with over the fall time, so if you want to see me put it together, then that's definitely possible as well. I just did one look with some of my favorite shades. I went in with Nooner, which is from the Naked 3, and then YDK, which is from the Naked 2, and I did a look with that, and I think I pulled in a little bit of this shade, which I think is a Liar or Factory, either one, and then I use this as a bit of liner, and this is Black Heart from the Naked 3, and then I use a little bit of the Dust shade, which is also from the Naked 3 in here. So a little bit of Naked 2, a little bit of Naked 3, some really stunning shades in here. So yeah, I was able to pull this really stunning taupey rose gold kind of look out of it. And that's why I have this palette. And now that I used it like this and I really tried to create a look, I was like, I did create my perfect cool tone palette when I pulled those two palettes apart and put it back in here. So I actually think that I may, even if I don't hit pan on any of these, I said I was gonna try and hit pan on these and then get rid of it. But I think it's actually going to live in my collection like this from now on because I just like it that much. It's got all the cool tones. It's a bit of a Frankenstein kind of situation, but who cares? If this is the way for me to get more use out of those two older palettes, then why not? So Naked 2 was very successful for me. And then the one I wanted to rope in just because when I filmed my palette battle earlier in the month, I was like, oh, this came out the winner on top. And I knew when I sat down with that grouping of 4 palettes to film that video that this was gonna win. Like, I just knew it because in terms of like a black and gray cool tone color story, this has been my, like, if I think of that kind of color story, this is the palette that comes to mind. And I just really enjoy some of the shimmers in here. Now, there's something I said in that video about the color story that now that I've used it again, I'm like, yes, that's the thing with this is missing. I'm missing a matte taupe like crease shade for this. Not a transition because Moth is actually a little bit too light and this is far too blue tone gray for it to really, really go seamlessly with Echo, which is one of my favorite taupe shades in my entire makeup collection. Like, this is so good. And I think that save for these two, I used every single shade here. So I put that in the crease and then I popped that all over the lid and then I used did I do this in the crease or this in the crease? I think I did this in the crease, that in the outer V, this all over the lid. This I used as an inner corner highlight. I used the black as liner, and then I used that purple on the lower lash line together with a bit of Echo as well. So love the look. I really think these shimmers are still really amazing. Like, these two are like the best taupe and the best silver in my entire makeup collection. But it definitely, in the matte range, I just feel that this is too light, this is too dark, wrong undertone. So I just need something that bridges the gap between these for it to really go with that. That's the only gripe I have with this. But this was still really, really successful. I really enjoyed using it again. And now I remember why this came out on top. And it was a prediction I made, but this is another one of those palettes, like the next one I will be showing you, that I just hadn't grabbed for in a while. Also because for a few years there, there were so many new things coming in that I was continuously trying new palettes, and it just didn't leave any room to go back to older things, which is one of the things I started doing last year. Was like, okay, I need to cool it on buying palettes, and then I can actually go back to some of these palettes that I know I love and get more use out of them. And that's definitely true for this one. And how this didn't make an appearance in one of these videos before, I don't know, but the Lorac Pro 3, hands down, is my favorite Lorac palette that they've done. I decluttered the 1 and 2, but the Pro 3 is still living strong in my collection. But I have to say, now that I've used it again, I'm like, yeah, if you were to buy this right now, like I believe it's still for sale, but this would not be a recommendation to buy right now. Like the Lime Crime, I would say, buy it. If you can still find it, it's still on the Lime Crime website. I know for sure it is. That's still good. Very up-to-date formula, I feel. But the Lorac formula, I feel like what's going on in this palette, we've just had other things like it being released in recent years that are better than this. So I do feel that this one, if you didn't already own it when this came out in like 2016, I don't think you still need this. This is not one you need to hunt down and that you need in your life. However, it was the first neutral eyeshadow palette that I found that worked for my fair skin. One of the things that a lot of people didn't like about it when it was released, because this palette, it got a lot of flack. Like, ooh, it was not good. This is one of those things that was just too light for most people. It was too light. But that's why it worked for me, because a lot of the OG neutral palettes at the time, whether it was a Naked One or a Too Faced chocolate bar, I always felt there was only a handful of shades in those palettes that looked good on me without making it like overly glam. Whereas with this, I felt I could use every single shade and nothing looked like I was punched in the face, nothing looked like I was trying to go out clubbing for my day-to-day life. Like, this was a true neutral everyday palette to me. And that's, I think, why a lot of people didn't like this. And I now also understand why a lot of people didn't love this either. I mean, the shimmers in the bottom row aren't really high shine metallics. They are more of a softer satin kind of vibe. Whereas at the time this was released, even though it worked really well in Lorac's line, it didn't really go with the trends at the time, which was the overly warm-toned Instagram kapow, like this level of shimmer, like impact, which is really something we started seeing around the time that this was released. So I think this was just a little bit ahead of its time. I think that if this had been released at the moment when we got these more like no makeup looks and the cold girl aesthetic that we have been seeing in recent years, then I think that this would have gotten a lot more positive reviews and a lot more people would have liked it. Now that I've used it again though, there's a reason why I went with 2 looks, because the first look I did, I just felt incredibly underwhelmed. In my brain, this was a lot better when I did the first look. It was a lot better than I thought it was going to be. So the first look I used clay with a bit of rose bronze, yes, and just like a very soft neutral look. And this is so close to my skin tone that it barely shows up. However, I say this all the time. I know not everybody likes people who say makeup for every day, that's not a thing to them because they would wear something like this every day. I wear things like this to work as well, but not everybody can. There are workplaces that have rules in place that limit what kind of makeup you can wear, either for safety reasons or for whatever like level of professionalism, whatever they have, like whatever reason they have. There are so many people who cannot wear bold colors to work or like these overly crafty things where, you know, a matte in the crease and a shimmer on the lid is all you're going to be able to do in like things that are really close to your skin tone. And I think that this palette is exactly what that offers. So my first look, I was like, bit underwhelmed. For the second look, I went in with terracotta, and then I also used a bit of light pewter, and I popped a little bit of amethyst on the lower lash line because it was like, I want to do a look where I use that purpley shade on the lower lash line. So it looks very purple compared to everything else, but it actually isn't. And I do really like how this is like the lighter, like almost cool tone shades, and then we get a little bit of warmth here, and we do get something that's a little bit more interesting. I think one of the looks I also used truffle for a bit of a liner moment. So this is good. It's just A, really light. 2, it's nothing too cool toned or too warm toned, so it's quite smack in the middle neutral. If you're super warm, this may look ashy on you, and if you are super cool toned, this may look orange on you, especially with a shade like these two shades may just pull a bit wrong on you. However, for me, this was really, really successful. I do think though that like this and this and this is just far too similar, as are these two. Like they're really pretty shades, but I do think that for like what you want is this. Like this is really all you need. Those 4 very light shades are what I think made it too light for a lot of people at the time. And as I mentioned, the formula is more of a soft, very blendable satin matte sort of look. So it's really great for very minimal makeup, but that's just not what was going on at the time. So I feel this is very overlooked. I still like mine, but in terms of like what 2023 makeup can do, this is just so far off. I think that if you like that sort of like matte with a shimmer look, that there's a lot of other palettes out there by now that can do, maybe not this exact color story, but that will give you just a very similar vibe. Anything by Viseart, for instance, I think is going to replace this. Something like the Viseart Cashmere. I think it has quite similar-ish shades to this with like these warmer tones and like the plummy things. I think they're a bit more rosy leaning in the Viseart Cashmere, but I think if you have that you have the more updated version of this one already in your collection. So this is not a must-have anymore, I feel, but I still love mine and I will be going back to it again at some point for sure. So those were the 4 palettes that I went back to in March. In April, I will be doing this again, of course. If you watch my Shop My Stash, which always goes live at the start of the month, I will be showing exactly which palettes will be featured in this video, because I always use my Shop My Stashes and also like my haul videos to show you what's like new in, what I'm trying out, what I want to go back to, what are my old favorites. So if you want to get a really good sense of what makeup I actually love and adore and what I'm testing out, then watch my Shop My Stash videos. And as the month goes on, I always review all of the new products over on my blog, and I also do some spin-off videos as well. So there's this whole like cycle of content that I create every month. So I hope you like to stay tuned for all of that other content that I have in store for you. In the meantime, if you have any suggestions for palettes that you want to see me go back to, then that's possible as well. All you need to do is leave a comment down below, and then I hope to see you in my next video. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.